We get out there and it's literally a hole cut in the mountain. It was kind of the coolest thing I've seen at a gun range, more or less. So it's a range that's cut out of the mountain. And so it's like you're shooting into this cave, right? And then there's these targets that are hanging all the way at the end, and you're shooting into this cave, and then they have these platforms, right? So where we have the tabletops, they have platforms. And so you have the platform, and then you have to stick your gun through like this opening, right? So you're pretty much by and large forced to shoot in that direction, right? You don't really have the ability to shoot over into someone's lane. You can, but you'd be hard pressed to do it. So, and then they have these awesome platforms that you can lay on, which is great. I love it. Like, having to shoot on shooting mats kind of sucks. Having to shoot on the ground and dirt kind of sucks. I'll do it, and I've done it. But, you know, they have this nice little platform for you to sit on. And not only that, we're not shooting at the targets over there. Here in America, you have like the paper. You gotta shoot it, and then there's a system. You gotta call it back so you can come see what your shot looks like. That's at 100 yards. What they do over there is they have a system where the targets stay down there, and there's numbers above your target, and they assign you a number. And then not only that, you have a screen right there next to you. When you get on the platform, you have a screen right there next to you, so that you, with the actual image of your target, and it tells you electronically where your hits are. When I tell you, I fucking love this system. This system is awesome. This episode of the Colion Noir podcast is brought to you by Vetter Holsters. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Colion Noir podcast. And this is going to be one of my solo podcasts. Kind of a struggle podcast, largely because I just got back from New York, and all of a sudden, as I got back to Texas, my allergies decided to just beat me over the face. So right now I'm dealing with allergies. So if you see kind of like certain breaks in this video, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's because I had to wipe my nose. But if you're listening to this in audio format, you're probably not going to notice at all. So there's that. So, I'm pretty sure some of y'all saw the title and thought, oh, here we go. Colion Noir is about to piss some people off again. Okay, so a backstory. I recently went to Switzerland. I had a trip to Switzerland. And on that trip, which Switzerland, beautiful country, by the way, like unbelievably beautiful. But for some reason, and I guess this is a thing in Europe, they don't believe in central cooling. Or maybe they do, maybe they don't. Whatever the case is, they didn't have it. Like, I stayed in a total of probably 4 to 5 different hotels on this trip, and maybe one actually had central cooling. The one hotel I thought would have central cooling, because it was an extremely nice hotel, didn't have central cooling. They had a heater for the floor, but they didn't have an actual AC. They had to roll up a portable AC unit to my room, and then I had to stick the hose outside of the window, in order to suck out all the hot air. So basically my window was open all night, and it just so happened that there was a soccer game that they won. So until about 3 o'clock in the morning, all I heard was honking, yelling, and screaming. So yeah, that was my experience in Switzerland. Okay, not really, but I actually thoroughly enjoy Switzerland. It is incredibly beautiful there. I wish personally that we had, in Texas. Texas is just, as much as I love Texas is flat and brown. That's Texas for the most part. I'm sure there are little nuggets and pockets and areas here, but for the most part, Texas is flat and brown. It's ugly. That said, I still love my state. But while I was on that trip, I went to a gun range. I went to a gun range called Brunig Indoor. And at this gun range, this is actually a gun range that's inside of a mountain. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like, we pull up, and the drive there was just immaculate. Like, it was beautiful beyond belief, just the drive up to this place. And then we get there, and there's this big ass mountain where there's always mountains. It's Switzerland. But you walk up to this mountain, and you see the sign, and then I think this place was called Brunig Indoor. And then it's just a mountain. And then you walk in, and it is a mountain, so it kind of had initially kind of a sterile feel, but as you continue to walk into it, it opens up and it just becomes like this gun range. You walk in and you have all of these 6 hours along the walls. Apparently, you're not allowed to own any other gun in Switzerland except for a SIG. I'm joking, but let's just say SIG is very prevalent and predominantly used in Switzerland, largely because of the rifles that they all use when they're in the military. So I remember walking in, and it felt like a normal gun range. It was just like normal, but not normal. Normal in the sense that, all the things you would expect to see at a gun range were there, right? You kind of had your like pro shop where you could buy guns, and then you had a wall where you could see where you could rent guns. And then, it had the counter with the people behind the counter passing out eye pro, ear pro, whatever. This day wasn't particularly too busy. I don't know how busy it normally gets there, but it didn't seem like it was that busy. But, so I kind of look around. Me and my friend were kind of going there and we're looking around and looking at different guns and stuff. A lot of SIGs, a lot of rifles that look like this, as you can see here. This is my SG5. I always get the models all confused because there's a bunch of letters and numbers and so many guns I do videos on. I always kind of remember SG551P. So this comes in as, forgot the microphone here. So this comes in as a pistol. It gets imported by JDI Imports, and they come in as a pistol. Then I have to form it, and then I put a stock on here, and they are the only imports for these. And I love these SG rifles. But over there, the rifle that I ended up shooting was actually called the PE90, and so essentially those are a full auto. But I think a lot of them get converted over. Like, so whenever you finish your military service over there and then you have the rifle that you take home with you, they usually convert them over to semi-auto. All right, so I've got to give a quick shout out to Vetter Holsters. They're now sponsoring the podcast. I've been using their light tuck Kydex inside the waistband holster, and what I really like is how adjustable it is. You can tweak the ride height and cant to get it exactly how you want. Plus, they've got holsters for over 450 gun models in 75 different colors, so you can pretty much find whatever you need. But here's the thing that really sets them apart: their customer service. I've heard so many stories about how they've gone above and beyond to make sure you're happy with your holster, and with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day money-back guarantee, it's clear they stand behind their products. If you're in the market for a great holster, check them out at betterholsters.com. So, they had a lot of these type of looking rifles along the wall. And so what I thought was interesting was, so when I walk in, the guy comes over to us, he starts talking to us like, hey, we want to shoot. Over there, people, by and large, speak English, at least passable English, a lot of German, a lot of, what's that called? Was this Swiss German or something like that? I can't remember. But he comes over to us and we tell him that I want to shoot. And there were two of these types of rifles. I'm going to probably have Peter put a picture in here. And there were two of these types of rifles. One was set up like with nothing on it. It just had literally iron sights. And then there was another rifle that was set up with a scope on it. I think it was a 3-18, a Hawk or something like that. I have a picture of it. I'll have it posted on here. So I'm looking at two rifles. I'm trying to think, okay, so in this mountain, this particular shooting that we were going to do, we're going to shoot out to 300 meters, right? And so I think in terms of yards, I know 300 meters is longer than 300 yards, but you get the point. So... So the guy can clearly tell that we're American, right? If our accents gave it away, clearly. And so he's trying to help us decide. He doesn't know anything about me. He doesn't know about what I do. For all he knows, he doesn't even know if I've ever shot a gun before. All right, so at this point, I'm looking at the rifle and I'm trying to decide which one I want to get. This one has like a 20-inch barrel. It has the integrated bipod system on it as well, which looks cool, but in practice kind of sucks. So I'm trying to decide which rifle I want to go with. And it's kind of funny because he was like, I think I suck at doing accents, so just bear with me. I do the same accent for every person, regardless of where you're actually from. He was like, I think this one would be better for you. Like, he hands me the one that has the 3-18 optic on it. Basically, I guess insinuating that, like, probably because I'm American. Because, all right, so you have to understand that out there, this is their PE90. That is their, like, sports shooting competition gun. That's the gun that they use to shoot competitions with. And over there, the competitions, they don't use optics. They use iron sights. So they're shooting at 300 meters with iron sights. And so I kind of laughed to myself, and I'm like, okay, I'll go with that one, I guess. And so he rings us up, we'll go upstairs, and he gets us set up. So when you get up there, you have like this area, like their shooting platforms at distance are a lot different than ours out here. Like in America, a 300, first of all, you'd be hard pressed to find a public range you can go shoot 300 yards at. You shoot 300 meters at. Just get that out of the way, unless it's kind of more like a private range or like one of those semi-private ranges, so to speak. But by and large, you usually relegate it to like 100 yards, maybe 2. And usually, you may have a platform, or it's just kind of an open field or like you have like the bench tops where you put them on there, where people use the zero and stuff, and it has a little cutout there so you can get on the gun, stuff like that. That's usually how our long distance shooting is situated. And I'm just saying long distance because it's outside the norm typically of distance that most people shoot. So at this point, I'm like, okay, we walk in and remember, everything's in a mountain. So the whole idea of most Americans not being able to go to a range that can shoot out to 100, that's me talking about outdoors. So now imagine indoor shooting. You'd be hard pressed to find a place you can shoot longer than 100 yards in the US. But here at this range, they had an indoor facility where you could shoot out to 300 meters. I want you to think about that for a second. 300 meters is far as fuck. Like, I've shot out a lot further, but at the end of the day, 300 meters is 300 meters. So we get out there, and it's literally a hole cut in the mountain. It was kind of the coolest thing I've seen at a gun range, more or less. So it's a range that's cut out of the mountain, and so it's like you're shooting into this cave, right? And then there's these targets that are hanging all the way at the end, and you're shooting into this cave, and then they have these platforms, right? So where we have the tabletops, they have platforms. And so you have the platform, and then you have to stick your gun through like this opening, right? So you're pretty much by and large forced to shoot in that direction, right? You don't really have the ability to shoot over into someone's lane. You can, but you'd be hard pressed to do it. So, and then they have these awesome platforms that you can lay on, which is great. I love it. Like, having to shoot on shooting mats kind of sucks. Having to shoot on the ground and dirt kind of sucks. I'll do it, and I've done it. But, they have this nice little platform for you to sit on. And not only that, we're not shooting at the targets over there. Here in America, you have like the paper. You just shoot it, and then there's a system. You got to call it back so you can come see what your shot looks like. That's at 100 yards. What they do over there is they have a system where the targets stay down there. And there's numbers above your target, and they assign you a number. And then not only that, you have a screen right there next to you. When you get on the platform, you have a screen right there next to you so that with the actual image of your target, and it tells you electronically where your hits are. When I tell you, I fucking love this system. This system is awesome because there's nothing more frustrating than when you're shooting. Let's say you had to zero. You try to zero your rifle and only to have to shoot, maybe you shoot 3 times, maybe you shoot 5 shots. Then you got to either walk down to go look at your hits, or you got to wait for the system to drag it on this pulley system or rail system, whatever it is, and come all the way back to you. And it's annoying because you shoot, wait, shoot. So it just adds insurmountable amounts of time to your range session where you're not even shooting. So here, everything is instant. And for somebody who is big on instant gratification, I know that sounds terrible, but I just am. The fact that I can shoot my shot, look up, I don't even have to get off. I don't even have to lose my cheek weld. I can shoot and look up and see exactly where I hit and make my adjustments on the spot. I freaking love that thing. Now, to a degree, you're going to have to trust that the system is giving you the correct information. However, I love the immediacy of the information because I am a repetitive learner. I don't like having a lot of time between me trying to do a task that I'm either learning or trying to perfect. I want to be able to do it, make the adjustments, and immediately go back and do it again. That's why I struggle with shooting competitions, because you shoot, then you got to wait to go to the next, you wait for other people to shoot, then you got to go to say, so you like hurry up and wait. And then at that point, I have all the time in the world to get in my head and figure out how to fuck stuff up. Like, it just sucks. I need to be able to repetitively go, 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 go. And that's how I learn stuff and get it down. And when I do, oh man, it's beautifully ugly. That said, having this platform system and being able to just get on the gun and just shoot, I loved it. And just be able to see it. And then there was a machine behind you which would score your hits. And then they had different kind of, I guess we call them games, that you can set up based on that machine back there, which is weird because this system was way more advanced than anything I've seen in the US, but was also low tech. Like the machine printed out your score like on this like receipt machine. So it was low tech, but very high tech at the same time. It was very interesting. So I get up on this platform and I start loading my rounds. This thing is chambered in 223. So I'm loading up my rounds, and there's a very big gun culture in Switzerland, right? So no one was acting weird, no one was acting funny, but I noticed that they didn't just shoot with iron sights. They shot with like these high-tech iron sights, but iron sights nonetheless. So I'm looking at these different people and their different guns and their setup. Everybody had the same rifle, essentially. Some people had theirs customized. Some people had colors and stuff like that on it. There was this one guy who came in there dressed to the tilt. He came in there, he had on this like jacket with a shooting shoulder pad. He had his right eye covered. He had a hat on. I mean, he looked like a human Terminator. And then I was kind of like laughing to myself when I saw him. I'm like, oh boy, you're serious. And then I saw his groups and I was like, oh yeah, you're serious. So at this point, I get down on this thing. I get down on this platform to shoot. And as I get down on this platform, so the gun that I'm using, like I say, the PE90, the way it's set up, it's set up on a high mount. Like the optic scope is set up on a high mount so that you can also use the iron sights if you wanted to. And so that's going to play an important role here in this story later. So at this point, I get up there on the platform. I'm very familiar with this, but I can tell that there are people there watching me shoot. Like, they can tell I'm an American. I don't know if it's the fact that I was black or my accent, whatever the case it may be. My friend was white, so who knows? Either way, I know they could tell I was American, and I could tell they were looking with curiosity, like, what is going on here? Like, let's see what this Yankee, so to speak, can do. So I get up there and I asked the guy, and I remember specifically, I said, hey, is this thing zeroed? And he's like, yes, it's zeroed. I was like, what is it zeroed at? He's like, zeroed at 300. I was like, cool. I'm assuming he meant he zeroed it at 50, back on at 3. You know how that goes. So I'm like, all right, perfect. So all the targets are down there at 300. So I get up on there. I'm not really familiar with this scope. I get on the scope. I'm not a big fan of the reticle. I can't remember what the reticle was, but nonetheless, I was like, let me just use the damn scope. And I had the cheek riser on there, so I could use it pretty easily. But I couldn't. But then the problem was the bipods, like the integrated bipods on there. In theory, you think, oh, this is a great idea. Like they close up clean, like creates a very smooth, handguard for you. But the bipods are non-adjustable. They are the height that they are, and they're high. They're exceedingly high. So I'm technically holding the rifle on my elbows. Like I'm even though I have a cheek weld, it's not a great one because I have to be up so high. So I get up there, look through the optic, I zero it out, make sure, because I'm assuming this thing is zeroed. So I zero it out or whatever, and I take my first shot. First shot was, I don't even think I hit the paper. Just to be honest. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Shot again, missed the paper. So then, usually when I do that, usually when I have something like that happen, I start going extremes. But you gotta be careful because you don't want to be too high or too low, because then outside you'll start sending rounds over the berm, so forth and so on. So what I decided to do was, I go, make exaggerated movements. So instead of holding dead center, I decided to hold down because I'd rather miss low than to miss high. So went down, saw where my hits were. This optic was not zeroed. At least I don't think it was zeroed. So, but I worked with it, right? I made the adjustments on the optic. First, I tried to change my holds. I tried to do it based on the hold. I'm like, all right. And the way I do that is the point of reference where I was shooting at, I shoot, where did it hit? So then I take that, where I was holding, bring that up, put that on the target where I want to do. I did that for a little bit. My groups tightened up. And then I just made the adjustments based on what my reticle was doing. And at that point, I was dead on. So after I do that, I get off and I don't realize that there's two guys standing behind me, or one guy standing behind me, and he's watching what I'm doing because everybody can see your shots on your screen. And so I get up and I get off the bench, and the guy doesn't speak English, but he kind of looks at me and he goes, he was like, you got it. Basically kind of like, yeah, damn, that looks weird. But you get the point. So basically he was insinuating that, I needed an optic, a scope, in order to get my hits because nobody there was using a scope. I was the only one there that had a scope on his rifle. So it was pretty obvious. And so it looked like, the American, he had to use an optic to get his hits. So then my friend gets up there. I tell him what the hold is on the reticle. He starts shooting, and his groupings are right down the center. So now I got a chip on my shoulder. And I always said, if you want to beat me at something, like, pacify me. Tell me I'm the greatest. But if you make fun of me or you challenge me, that's where you're going to have problems with me. Because then I get a chip on my shoulder and then it's game time. All right, so now I'm back up. And I get back on there. I get on the platform. And I'm like, you know what? Screw this optic. So then I get back on the platform and I'm like, you know what? Screw this optic. I'm going to shoot irons. I'm going to show this guy that I know how to shoot. And in case you're wondering, I'm freaking hot in here, so if I start sweating, that's why. I just turned the AC on. All right, so I get on the gun, and when I get on the gun, I'm like, I'm going to irons. And because the offset on the optic, because it was sitting so high, because it was so high, you could tell when I'm using the irons versus using the scope. And so now I'm on the gun, clean target, and then I start shooting. My first shot was off. I was on paper, but it was just off. Then I understood my sight picture at that distance, my hold was, and then I started drilling it. And then it just got tighter and tighter and tighter. And you see, the thing is, I never really shoot irons on a rifle. I was not taught to shoot a rifle with iron sights. The first time I shot a rifle, I was taught to shoot the rifle with a red dot and a scope. And I never really learned to shoot irons. I'm just going to be honest. Because when I got into guns, it was pretty much just an assumption. It just assumed that you shoot a rifle, you're going to have a red dot or a scope on it. Very rarely did you. I mean, there was still a little bit of that dogma where people were like, you need to learn how to shoot irons. But I never really learned how to shoot irons on a rifle. However, I knew how to shoot irons on a rifle because I just imparted what I learned from shooting irons on a handgun. See, I learned how to shoot handguns first with irons. Then I started learning how to shoot with red dots, which is why I'm so slow to convert over to red dots over the years. But in this case, I like shooting irons on a rifle, even though I never really knew how to do it. It was nothing. I mean, it's easier for me on a rifle because I have all the points of contact versus a handgun where you're sitting here and you're kind of dancing and wiggling all over the place. Give me the rifle. I can shoot irons on a rifle any day. So at this point, after I start nailing all my targets, I start nailing, my groupings are really small. The guy behind me, I kind of turn around and I kind of look at him. And he doesn't say anything. He just kind of goes quiet. Because now he can't joke that I don't know how to shoot irons. Because I do know how to shoot irons, even though I don't shoot irons, because I think having to shoot irons on rifles is stupid. And I know it's going to piss off some people who learned back in the 1860s that, everybody learned how to shoot rifles with their irons. But it's 2025. Like, we've had red dots and scopes on rifles for how long now? And so it comes down to this point of the question. Do you need irons? Do you need to learn how to shoot irons on a rifle? And I don't know if you necessarily need to on a rifle at certain distances. We're at a point now with scope and red dot technology that, yes, could you find yourself in a situation where your irons don't work, where your red dot doesn't work or your scope doesn't work? Yeah, it's possible. Very highly unlikely, but very possible. And I think there's just something intuitive about shooting irons on a rifle that doesn't necessarily exist with a handgun. Learning how to line up the irons on a rifle, I think, is rather intuitive. With the handgun, you kind of have to learn. It's a different feel. Like, it doesn't feel the same. And it feels a little foreign initially because you think you're lined up, but you're not. And you got to teach people, it's like you got to take the rear, line it up with the front, then make sure you keep that image picture and put it on a target. Like, it can be confusing to a lot of new shooters. I've seen it. It's just harder to me to learn how to shoot irons on a handgun than it is on a rifle. And so I think if you learn how to shoot irons on a handgun, you can easily transfer that over to rifle, even though you've never shot irons on a rifle before. So I think personally, you don't really need to learn how to shoot irons on a rifle anymore. I just think we are at a technological point where it's one, it's rather intuitive. Two, our optics are that good. They just are. And I know there are going to be some hardcore people out there who are like, no, you need to learn how to shoot irons because irons, man. Like, I think I think the shooting competition with just irons is stupid. Like, I don't think at a certain point you can't see shit. So you're really kind of just guessing, and it then just becomes a game of whose eyesight is better, right? So I don't necessarily see the value in. And I know I'm going to get a ton of shit for this. I don't necessarily see the value of overemphasizing the ability to shoot iron sights on a rifle. At close range, it's intuitive enough where you don't really have to think about it. At longer distances, it's kind of the same thing. But again, the odds of you having to take a 300, 400 yard shot with iron sights on your rifle, I don't know. I don't know if it's really that necessary. And yes, like, again, your optic could go bad. You know, the battery may run dead or something like that. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think at this point in the game, we have the technology. We have the technology's there. The technology is reliable. You can make the argument about handguns, and the reason why I say that is because at least with the handgun, you know, the chances of you having an optic go down or go bad on a handgun are actually pretty high. You know, or your battery going dead. I've had it. I carry a gun all the time, and I've literally, which is why I did a video about everything you should do before you put a gun in your pants before you go out the door. I've carried a gun around all day long, only to realize when I got home my battery was dead. So if I had to use that gun in self-defense, I would have to learn how to do that. I would have to use my iron sights. Now, I will say this. I do think on a handgun, you should definitely have a situation. If you're going to run a red dot, you should have a co-witness. Meaning, if something happens to that red dot, you should still be able to use those iron sights. Now, some people like to just use the housing of the gun, the housing of the red dot, and use that as kind of like a soft iron sight, so to speak. And you could do that at certain distances up close. Yes, you could do that. Take the whole of the space that the red dot has, the window, and just put that on the target and shoot. And you'll generally be on target depending on how far you are. But it's so easy now because we have so many options for suppressor height sights that will clear the optics so that you can get a co-witness and you're good to go. But, you know, for me, I never really ever shoot irons on a rifle. And honestly, at a certain point, it's, for me, on an iron and a rifle at 300 meters, you're just reacclimating yourself to that hold. There is a skill set involved in it. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying, though, at a certain point, like, I can only see so much. I'm not seeing what I'm aiming at. I'm just aiming at the big ass black dot that's all the way down there at 300 yards or meters. So for me, and I'm like, repeat the hold, right? Repeat the hold, find out where it is, and having that system there where I could see where my hits were, I can make the slight incremental adjustments and be able to fine tune my hold, because you're talking millimeters of movements that aren't even perceptive to somebody standing there watching you, especially at those distances, because this tiny movement like this can throw your shot off by feet at those distances. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of only shooting iron sights on rifles at those distances. It was challenging in a fun way. But if you're going to give me the option, I'm going to take a scope every single time. every single time I'm going to take a scope. That's just me. That could just be the American me. I don't know. But that was my time in Switzerland on that trip where we went to that gun range inside of the mountainside. And I had to check old boy a little bit, let him know, like, yeah, sure, I use optics, but I still know how to shoot with irons if I need to. Now we're going to go on to, so now what I said before, I was going to start doing a new section of the podcast where anytime I do these solo podcasts where I want to answer a question that somebody asks me via email. We have I think it's called Ask Colion Noir or something like that. Peter put that on here. And today's question comes from Joel Love. And here's his question. New 43X owner, and my question to you is, what defense ammo is okay to run? I currently have 147 grain HST in all of my EDC bags. Is that fine, or should I go for 124 grain HST? Or if not those, what ammo would you suggest? I start to practice and eventually carry. I'm assuming he's saying I'm planning to start to practice and eventually carry. All right. Okay, so the reason why I chose this question is because a lot of people don't realize you do really, when it comes, like, people will go out to the range and they go and buy this cheap ammo. And I don't mean cheap as a pejorative, right? I mean cheap like you buy the Full Metal Jacket stuff, because you're not gonna pay $1 a round just to go and sling it at a still target on a range day. The problem is a lot of people will put this stuff in their guns and the gun will run fine, no issues. And then they'll go home and then get jacketed hollow points or defense rounds, same thing, and not shoot those through their gun, and they'll just assume, and it may not even be conscious, like they don't even realize, they don't even know. When you have a round nose on a round, like, it makes that round feed a lot more reliably than a jacketed hollow point, because the jacketed hollow points have the cavity. And sometimes you can have feed ramps that are steeper than others, and that cavity can get caught up on that feed ramp, and now your gun has a failure to feed. And by failure to feed, meaning like the gun, like literally the bullet will get stuck on the feed ramp before it gets inside of the chamber. Or sometimes it'll even hit the roof, it'll clear the feed ramp, but then hit the roof of the beginning opening of the of the barrel, and then the teeth will get stuck on the roof of the barrel. Now, the reason why I know this is because the vast majority of the shooting that I do, when you see me in videos, I'm shooting jacketed hollow points. I'm not shooting Full Metal Jackets, and thankfully I'm blessed in the sense that I have a sponsor who is Nosler, and the stuff that I get from them is all jacketed hollow points. Now, the vast majority of the time, I'm shooting 124 grain. And so first things first, whatever ammo you choose to use, make sure it runs reliably in your gun. It's not that this ammo is bad and it sucks. There are bad ammo, but a lot of times it's just your gun doesn't like that ammo. That literally is a thing. So for whatever reason. So you want to make sure that if you go out and you shoot at the range, run at least a box of that ammo in your gun. I know it's expensive, but you got to do it, because you're going to find out certain guns don't like certain ammo, and you don't want to find that out. You don't go shoot at the range with Full Metal Jacket and then realize in the middle of a gunfight your gun jams because the bullet doesn't like your gun. Doesn't mean your gun's bad or the bullet's bad. It's just the two just don't like each other. You got to think about it. If I'm making bullets, I got to make bullets for every possible degree of feed ramp or style of gun, or however they decide to however they decide to build the gun. For the number of guns that are out there and the different types of ammo and cavity sizes, I mean, it's bound to happen. Now, so let's talk about this weight grain issue, right? So, the Glock 43X has a very short barrel. I think it's like 3.4 inches. And when you start, the thing about jacketed hollow points is jacketed hollow points, I'm just going to say hollow points from here on out. Hollow points need speed to open up reliably and cause the damage that is required to stop somebody from doing what they're doing as effectively as possible. First of all, handguns are terrible human stoppers, from what I've learned. But nonetheless, you still want to maximize what you have. Now, 147 grain bullet, the weight of that bullet, something heavier, is going to travel slower than 124 grain. You're looking at almost my 200, 300 feet per second difference, which is a big deal in the sense of with 140 grain, you have a lighter bullet traveling at a noticeably higher velocity. And so that increases the reliability of that round to open up and create damage. You got to think about it. You have the bullet this size that when it hits flesh, it opens up and becomes even bigger, and then dumps a lot more energy into that thing that you're trying to stop. So, and on top of that, there is also a difference in recoil sensation, right? So a heavier bullet is going to be more of a shove. That's why when you shoot 45, there's kind of a shove, where 124 grain, a lighter bullet, is going to have more of a snap. So it kind of comes down to your personal preference in that regard. However, 124 grain is going to be way more common than 147 grain for the most part. Most people, when they go to the range, they shoot 124 grain. So they're kind of already used to that type of recoil. So from that perspective, I'm going to say, if all things considering, right, I'm going to have to say the 124 grain is going to be your best bet. Now, 124 grain plus P is going to be a pretty hot round, and so it might be a little bit more snappier, but I don't know if people are that close to the margin of perceptive differences when it comes to the recoil of plus P versus a standard 124 grain. And I just think out of a shorter barrel, it just makes more sense from a consistency of mushrooming. And that means that the cavity of the hollow point actually opens up. Because sometimes if you're shooting a slower bullet, a bigger, slower bullet, especially if you're shooting through clothes and things of that nature, those clothes can clog that bullet up. And then you're basically just kind of punching holes at that point. Whereas something that's moving really light, that's really light and fast, it's moving so much faster that it has that velocity to open up even though it may be clogged up. And so I'm going to have to say, if you're going to force my hand, I'm going to say go with the 124 grain, because one, you'll be able to get a lot more training with it, because you have way more access to 124 grain training rounds, so that you can mimic as closely as possible the rounds that you'll actually be shooting. But like I said before, and also there is a possibility where you have a point of impact shift. Like, people don't realize how much of a degree you can change on impact based on just the weight of the bullet. You can have a 24 grain bullet, and at a certain distance, you're almost off by a whole 2-3 inches, possibly. And you're going to get a little bit more reliability at point of impact. So because you don't want to go shoot 124 grain and then put 147 grain in your gun, and then you think you have your shit zeroed, when in reality, there's actually a difference. But if you do shoot with 124 grain and then zero with the 147 grain, and you get killing two birds with one stone. You get to actually run the rounds through your gun, so you know that everything's good to go. And then also on top of that, you're getting the appropriate zero for that round weight. So all things considered, I'd say the most important thing is to make sure that that gun actually likes the ammo that you're shooting in it. Shoot at least, in a perfect world, you'd shoot 200 rounds of the shit. And I know. It's expensive. But we are talking about something here that you carry to protect your life, and you want it to run as reliably as possible. You shoot 200 rounds to the gun and you don't have any issues, it's safe to say that gun likes that ammo. So that's going to be my thing. I would say go with the 124 grain. You'll be able to practice more with 124 grain. You'll be able to, and then on top of that, you have with the extra velocity, you have the high reliability of the actual bullet expanding. And I think that the differences in recoil, even though the 147 grain may feel a little bit softer, I think it's marginal, especially when we're talking about 9. If we were talking about like 45, that's a whole different story. So just make sure that it actually runs in your gun, and that you can practice with it pretty regularly. Sorry. Just make sure that the bullets actually run in your gun and that you can practice with it regularly by getting practice rounds that are the same grain weight as the rounds that you're going to put in your gun. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Colion Noir podcast. Tell me what you think. Do you think that learning how to shoot irons on a rifle is necessary to the same degree that it was in the past? I'm kind of cheating with that question because I didn't say that before. I just said that they weren't necessary. Or do you think, hey, no, we are in 2025. Everybody has red dots on their guns and scopes on their rifles and shit. We don't need it. So let me know in the comment section. For those of you who are just listening to this, I'm on Spotify. I'm pretty sure there's some comment sections that you can leave on there too, and on Apple. And wherever you're watching this, generally speaking, you should be able to leave a comment.